In 1947, an unknown object crashed near Roswell, New Mexico. The U.S. military maintained to this day that it was an experimental high-altitude surveillance balloon belonging to a classified program named Mogul. But the truth is far more alarming. Roswell Army Airfield Public Information Officer Walter Haut issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Bomb Group had recovered a crashed flying disc from a ranch near Roswell. The following day, the commanding general of the 8th Air Force, Roger M. Ramey, stated that in fact a radar tracking balloon had been recovered, not a flying disc. A press conference was called featuring debris said to be from the crashed object. For 30 years, the incident was forgotten until nuclear physicist and researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Major Jesse Marcel, who was directly involved with the original recovery in 1947. Here is Major Marcel holding the supposed debris, which was given to him by his commanding officer. Marcel stated that the military had indeed covered up the recovery of an alien spacecraft and its inhabitants. Major Marcel had been one of the most elite intelligence officers of the 1940s. With above top secret level clearances, his credibility was significant, considering he was entrusted with the atomic bomb. Suddenly, the Roswell incident was center stage across the world, with scientific experts and highly credible witnesses questioning the government's explanation of these events. The Mogul weather balloons had paper backing. None of the foil in the pictures has evidence of paper backing. There are also none of the basic components typically seen on the Mogul balloons. In addition to this, Major Marcel was ordered to be pictured with the fake debris and to never discuss the incident. More witnesses came forward, detailing a huge military operation and at least 11 more crash sites. It quickly became apparent that this was not an isolated incident and that something very big was happening. In addition to this, in 1989, former mortician Glenn Dennis put forth a detailed personal account, claiming that alien autopsies were indeed carried out at the Roswell base. 1 year after the crash, secret documents were leaked revealing that the Air Force in fact had no idea what the recovered objects were. 3 years after the crash, Special Agent Guy Hotel of the FBI reported that the Air Force had indeed recovered 3 flying saucers, 50 feet in diameter and 9 human-shaped bodies. In total, over 600 witnesses have validated the original claim that the Air Force did in fact recover a UFO. Skip forward in time now to the 1990s, and a huge story that hit the headlines across the globe. The actual footage of the alien. What you are about to witness is the first-hand story of how this film came to be, what was involved, and what occurred afterwards. Whatever you believe, Santilli and Schofield now have personal convictions about the existence of aliens. They are convinced that we are not only visited on a regular basis, but that our governments know this and have for hundreds of years. These men have been stalked, threatened, and interrogated. The Chinese authorities stated they knew of the footage and that it was similar to something they had already seen. In their own words, this is the amazing story of the alien autopsy.
About Elvis, and it was really before Google had come along and you had the ability to search for archived material. And what we did at the time was post ads in local papers around the eastern seaboard of America, because we were looking for people that had seen Elvis in 1954, 55. And so in '92 we posted these ads saying that if you had any footage or took any footage or any still images in 1954, 55 of Elvis on stage, we'd be interested. And we had cash, and we were just on tour, if you like, picking up photographs, footage, and anything Elvis related.
Right. So you were both out there doing that?
Yeah.
Yes, we both went. I went on behalf of Polygram. Ray went on behalf of himself as an independent.
Well, I was retained by you guys.
He helped us to put it together, and we went to several different places. Cleveland being probably.
And Cleveland is where we came across the cameraman, and he supplied us with, I think, probably what we believe to be really unique footage of Elvis on stage, and that formed a very important part of the Elvis documentary we made at the time.
Right.
But after we purchased the footage of the cameraman, he simply later on in the day, early evening, sort of knocked on the door and said, "Would you be interested in something else?" And that's how the alien autopsy story kicked off.
He approached Ray.
Story of Roswell to me. So, and of course I told him what we had come across, and then from that there was a whole roller coaster, because most of the dignitaries in the UFO community were knocking on their door, wanting to see us, wanting to see the footage, and wanting to purchase the footage.
And Philip Mantle remembers this.
Oh yeah. I mean, we had, as I say, every dignitary in the UFO world knocking our door, right down to meetings in London hotels where people were offering brown paper bags with cash in there for our footage, and we just simply said no. But the problem is, the moment we said no, the line was drawn in the sand, and they became the enemy. So every time we turned up on TV or doing anything with the footage, they were there to debunk it. But initially, they wanted to buy it. They were totally convinced that it was genuine and it was exciting. But obviously, because they're not involved, or they weren't involved, they took the opposite position afterwards.
And also, I think they resented the fact that neither Ray nor I had any background in that thing, and Ray was very much involved in music. I was involved in video, and for two guys to come across something like this, which for them would have been the holy grail, I think Ray's quite right. When they couldn't do a deal with us, it was either you're with us or against us, and they ended up being against us. But it's also worth mentioning that it took quite a long time from when Ray saw the footage to when he actually acquired it. It wasn't all done big bang volume one. Big
No,
thing.
I mean, there was a good year and a half between first seeing the footage and getting the footage over into the UK.
You had to raise finance, didn't you?
Well, finance was the issue, but there were a couple of problems, and I know it sort of seems we had a lot of fun over, with regard to the story, but when I first saw the film, those canisters were open for the first time in 50 years, and they were sealed. And when I saw the film, with the projector slid it up to the side of the wall, we didn't even have a screen, and we just saw it on a plain wall and saw the footage that you now know as Alien Autopsy. But in the year and a half after, because the air reacted with the acetate, with got the film back into the UK, it was being stripped off as it was going through the projector. It was just all coming off, and
How did you feel?
Gutted. Good
Well,
word.
Well, because it was one of those things. It's like it's the worst that could happen, but you can't change it. It's happened. So
did you not have that terrible gut wrenching feeling?
Well, no. I mean, we went into a sort of we went into sort of lockdown mode. How do we save it? And the only way we could really do that was to get the film and stick them in clamps and then take stills, and then and it was a very slow process to try and to save what we had. Okay.
And it's fair to say he's right from the point of view when it arrived and you opened the tins and there was that funny smell, and then you did have a look on your face of oh my god, and it wasn't a matter of being cheated, because I don't think we ever thought even he knew what he'd done to the film by exposing it to the air.
It's more the fact
to be honest,
it's something the world should have and see, and oh my god, it's gone.
But we work in an industry where a lot of things go wrong, and it was just one of those things, and it was, we knew that there was a problem, and we're both professional enough in our own industry to know that we've got to salvage what's there, and we did have a very good team of people, so we were able to salvage a certain amount of the imagery, and then we took on the responsibility of restoring it, or some people say faking it, or whatever, but we believe that what we did was restoration. And and I liken it to exactly what goes on in most of the major art galleries around the world. I mean, if you look at Leonardo's Last Supper, I mean, there isn't any of that paint up there that he put on there. It's been repainted so many times over 200-300 years. At one time it had a whole door knocked through it.
Am I right in thinking that there are actually some frames in there that are original?
Yes, there are.
Because some of the film was saved intact. It wasn't all.
And the thing
shot
about
images.
it, we are.
You spliced those.
Yeah, we added those into the.
But we are commercial. Okay, so for us it was a commercial opportunity, and what we did at the time was we constructed a marketing campaign which I think outside of Live Aid was the largest TV event in the world. Okay, we were able to embargo all broadcasters until one day, 28th of August 1995, and the campaign to protect the film, get it delivered on time, get it broadcast on time was huge, and it was the whole thing was a commercial exercise, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the original film itself did exist, that the cameraman is real, and that what we did really was a restoration. When you get dignitaries in the world of special effects like Stan Winston, who probably is
the best in the world,
he did Nothing Alien and all of those movies.
Predator.
For him to turn around on screen and say, we couldn't do that, we can't do that, either it's the greatest fake or hoax in history, or it's real. For him to actually say that on camera, was just a testament to the skills and the people that we used. The roller coaster of events in '95 was far darker than the Anton Decker movie that portrayed, which is a comedy, because at the time we were being not only chased by the UFO community, but we had.
We were stalked by nutters, we had death threats.
Yeah, offices broken into, homes broken into, cars broken into. We had dignitaries from various different governments fly over to see the film.
I think it's actually important to mention that when we'd finished the restoration, the first people I recall seeing it were the Chinese. And they came to our office, and I think there were 4 of them. They all came with official papers from the government. They were scientists, and they wanted to look at the footage. And it was the first time that we had really shown anybody of any significance, or shall I say, authority or education, the restored footage. And their instant response was,
"Seen it before?
You've got the same the Americans have got." So it told us that what we had. The original footage was real, that we had done an extremely good job of restoring it, because of course after that it came under intense scrutiny from everybody, and no one was ever able to find anything in that footage that was not for real, because it was absolutely based on the real footage that Ray had. And it was when the Chinese said what they said that we looked at each other and thought, we've got something serious here, and this is a serious situation. And we had all the Argentinians got involved, the South Africans
came over. I mean, the Americans flew us out. You know, a whole array of secret squirrels in America had a good look at the footage
and laughed because they were caught in a very difficult position because we got
You're talking about government.
yes,
totally.
Because we were invited to the Pentagon and shown the footage and they laughed. And
Seriously?
Absolutely.
You went to the Pentagon?
We didn't. One of our team.
We went to Washington originally, and they actually put us up in the Watergate Hotel, which was wonderful, flown out first class, and we went to a number of different meetings with different people within the Air Forces and Secret Service or whatever. Everyone wanted to see footage. So, you know, it was really interesting because for us, that level of interest in our film just added so much more credence to the whole story and everything else. And of course, at that time, everyone was wanting to know who the cameraman is, and it became this huge sort of cat and mouse game. People just trying to intercept our messages, find
him, trace our calls. The guy at Channel 4, when they did the documentary, they were particularly keen to find him. And I think it's worth mentioning that when he sold the footage, the reason he sold it to Ray and not anybody else was because Ray was English, and he honestly thought that once he'd sold it, he'd never hear another word about it. You know, it was very naive, bless him. And I was in Ray's office the day after the show had gone out on Fox for the very first time, and he was screaming down the phone at Ray because he obviously flicking the channels, and all of a sudden, plus I think Fox announced they were offering $1 million to anyone who'd find him, and he crapped himself, for want of a better phrase, and was very scared and absolutely furious with Ray, although Ray had done nothing wrong. But he just got it in his mind that once he sold it,
I don't think he ever expected the film to come back into the US, and so, you know,
or attract the level of interest that it did, because it was the first show in the history of Fox they'd ever had to show twice in the same week due to public demand. We believe it remains to this day their highest rated ever documentary.
Well, they showed it 3 times in 1 week.
Yeah, it was just outright. The coverage, it just went bang, and it was all over the media. And of course, he was scared stiff, so we had to go find another cameraman.
But the Secret Service never actually got hold of the cameraman.
Oh, no,
not that we're aware of.
I think they took the view, and I think that was portrayed quite well in the Internet movie. They took the view that we just let's carry on because no one would believe us, and I think so they were
caught in a rock and a hard place. They couldn't make any comment for or against it.
Well, if they had done anything to stop us, it would have added so much more credibility to the whole UFOs. You know,
it's kind of a usual ploy, isn't it? They use just call them little green men, and people just.
So and they couldn't obviously come out and deny it, because then it'd be, you're denying it. So they couldn't win, really. So going after the cameraman actually wasn't really in their interest, unless, of course, the media did find him, and then it all became a lot more serious because they could track his military record and so on and so forth. But we managed to put them off the scent of the cameraman pretty fast, so we protected his anonymity.
Have you never been afraid for yourselves and your families?
I think at the time I was in the firing line, really, very much so, and in fact we backed out of the project after broadcast because it was all going too hot under the collar. It was just a nightmare. We also have our own businesses to run, and it was contaminating all our areas of normal business. So 96, after the first broadcast, I decided to stop the whole thing, and I did stop, and it was only in 2006 that we revisited it when Warner's wanted to make the movie. So we're 15 years now into the subject, and the dust has settled a little, and I don't think that telling the stories we do now is a problem, but at that time it was a lot more difficult.
Did did you both personally, I mean, you first, Ray, how did you personally cope with being, you know, with respect to just an ordinary person, to then suddenly being world famous?
Oh, I'm not sure how to answer that. It was actually quite exciting, to be honest. You know, but on one hand it was quite exciting, but on the other hand, again, going back to credibility, you know, if you're trading in images rights and anything, and you know, your credibility is being hung out to dry in one area, then it does affect your main business as well. So you know, I was quite glad that Fox made the show they did, and I'm quite glad that we pitched the whole thing to allow the public to make up their own mind. You know, what people don't realise as well is that because we didn't want to be in a situation where anyone could say there was any kind of fraud, what we did was we for the most part, the raw footage was given free of charge to every broadcaster, and it was given to them free of charge on the basis that they were compelled and obliged to investigate the footage and spend a fortune investigating the footage and make a documentary. They would have the rights for that documentary for broadcast, and we took the rights for that same documentary for home video. So, and each country made their own show, and each country, you know, relayed, you know, the question, you know, put it out to the public: do you believe or don't you believe? And that was the commercial game. Every single broadcaster had a hugely successful show, made an absolute fortune, killing out of their viewing figures, and we did very well out of the DVD rights, or sorry, home video rights at the time, and it was a totally successful commercial operation on that basis. Nobody came away having lost money, or no one came away.
Did it change you personally?
Sorry?
Did it change you personally?
Yeah, of course, because I'm very proud of all of it. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and it's summarised by an incident that happened when I was with my son at an Arsenal game, and Sky was showing the documentary about Ray and I, and this huge guy walked over to me who I didn't know, and he said to me, "You're an alien guy," and I didn't know if he was going to punch me or what, and he said, "I want to buy you a drink." It was genius, and it sort of summed the whole thing up for me, because people do, whether Ray, you know, Ray was a lot closer to the trouble end of it, because the world is full of lunatics, and Ray had problems with lots of different people around the world who had nothing better to do than to drive him mad, and it was even called the Santilli footage in lots of places as well, where it wasn't, my name wasn't so associated with it, because I was much more in the background doing all kinds of things, and so I wasn't directly affected by the fame of it. But I was a lot prouder because I didn't have much of the negative side to deal with. And although Ray and I worked together in dealing with the negative things, and a lot of it was jealousy, in fairness, because it really was. That's what it boiled down to. And people making claims. And even I just got back from LA, and I was in a meeting, and somebody was talking about alien autopsy, because it often comes up when I'm in meetings, and they say, "Oh, do you know how many people I've met who take credit for alien autopsy?" But that's actually a compliment, and it's such a big deal that, you know, some guy who, you know, because we did a documentary in America with a team of people, so the cameraman there would have gone, "Oh yes, I was at the alien autopsy," and I'm kind of pleased that people want to take credit for something, because if it wasn't that big a deal, it wouldn't be worth taking.
There were always people turning up saying, you know, we were involved, we did this, we did that. Most of them we've never met.
Yeah, we don't know, and I got names thrown at me this time, and I'm sorry, I don't know. But so at the end of the day, you get used to it, I suppose.
I mean, this might not actually appear in this, but Spiros Milaris, how you say his name, what's he got to do with this?
He was a person that we used as a studio facility at the very beginning. He's a lovely guy, or has been. He's very intelligent. He's probably one of the most creative people I've ever come across. And when we were first restoring the film, he did assist, you know, but that's really as far as it goes. And he was, you know, but you know, and I've seen all the stuff that he said now, and I've seen he's got this book out. You know, it's taken 15 years to suddenly decide he wants to, you know, say something. Well, you know, I just find that incredible. But there are other people as well. I mean, there are people that come out of the woodwork all the time, you know. And the problem is that when people are hard up or going through any commercial problems, then if they can dip into, in our industry, if they can dip into the story and make some money out of it, they do. You talked about Philip Mansell earlier. Well, with respect to Philip, who I do like. I mean, he's traded for 15 years off this story. He's done conferences. He's been flown around the world talking about it. He's published books. He's made documentaries. Good luck to him. But so it's a commercial
It's
game.
gonna happen. You put it out into the world.
But what I'm saying is, it's a game. The whole thing. It's a commercial game.
It's fascinating.
I still stand by the story that that the footage is real. The story is real. We've never said it was an alien, by the way. So and again, that's something that people tend to forget. Even the cameraman can't say it's an alien. All he can say is that
That's fascinating.
That was a creature.
There was a lot of scientific testing at the time, wasn't there? Post-Nazi.
Yeah, that's right. They were flying up, crash test dummies, whatever you call it. I don't know. I mean.
But it was the creature recovered
from the vehicle,
from Roswell.
Yeah.
So whatever it was,
Yeah.
It's not for us to determine ultimately, but personally, absolutely it's an alien.
Yeah,
I have no doubts whatsoever. it's an
But
alien.
we've
What else is it?
we've never gone on record and said it's an alien, because we simply don't know. We weren't there in 47.
Personally, do aliens visiting this planet have visited this planet?
100%. Absolutely.
I think you have to look at a planet that's been around for billions of years, and us as humans, as we are now. I mean, you're talking a couple of 100,000 years. Blink of an eye, really. So what's gone on in the past, does take some thought, and of course, what's out there? There has to be life out there.
But are they coming here?
Yes.
Why wouldn't they?
I believe they are.
And certainly now, if you look at what's going on now, they've discovered particles that travel faster than light. So that the speed of light is no longer a restriction. There must be other forms of transport. There has to be life elsewhere. If that life, and as I said to you earlier, we've only been here in the blink of an eye. If some of those other life forms have been around millions of years, they're going to be more advanced, and so their grasp of technology is going to be different. And why wouldn't they be here? It's a lush planet. It has lots of I suppose attributes and benefits of other creatures.
I think there's a lot more to it. I think they've been coming here for thousands of years. I think they were involved with the building of the pyramids. I think they were involved with the Greeks, the Romans, all the major civilizations helping them. I believe they're involved today with governments around the world. I think all sorts goes on. We don't.
It's more
know
of a
about.
conspiracy theory.
No, I do believe in it. I believe that that they observe our planet. I never believed that they were ever been a threat to the planet, because I think if they were that interested in blowing us up like Hollywood would have us believe, they could have done it any time. I think if anything, the only time we'd ever, as a race, ever know they existed because they wanted us to is if we were on the brink of destruction and they decided to come in and stop us, which I think is the only way we'd ever know, outside of one crashing in the middle of Trafalgar Square where you can't explain it away. So I absolutely believe they come here all the time, they observe us all the time, and I think the governments are fully aware of their existence and are in league with them in many ways. At
the time we came across the film, in our own investigation of the subject, we were able to meet with the senior curator of species at
Natural History Museum,
and various other scientists and so forth, and a lot of information came our way. But the most fascinating thing, if you look at a graph of human development, for 20,000, 30,000 years it's like that. Okay, and then in the last 60 years it's like that. So what happened there to make the graph go up that way?
It's like what they call the bell curve.
And it's digital technology, nanotechnology, everything that's
fiber optics, all kinds of things.
It just suddenly from nowhere almost. The world we live in now is so totally different from the world of 40 years ago.
Do you believe, Gary, that the aliens are genetically manipulated?
Yes, I do. I believe that their interest in us is probably as much biological. A lot of the accounts that you read where people have been abducted will talk about them having been probed and investigated. I knew a girl who firsthand who claimed that she'd been had visitation in her room and she'd been probed and prodded and
she committed suicide.
She did commit suicide almost as a result of it. And I believe that they're interested in our biology and who we are and all that kind of thing. And I think they're generally interested in us as a race, but I think we're way below them in terms of everything. And in some ways we must be a bit of a disappointment, I think, because I think as a race we are a disappointment, the way we treat each other and the way we are, and wars and horrific things that go on. And I think if they felt they could actually do something to change us for the better, maybe one day that they would, which would be a good thing. But I think there's lots of things about the internal organs of cattle being removed and all sorts of, obviously crop circles have come up many times, so there are traces of them here, and I think more evidence will come out as time goes on. And I think things like the internet and people's ability to swap information and every phone having a camera and all kinds of things, a lot more stuff is coming up now that's never come up before, because we've never had the ability to record it so easily and so readily. It's also remarkable how many people you talk to who have something to say, and the reason they tend to talk to us is because they know we're not going to laugh.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people won't say things because they think it's just going to come across like a nut job, and we don't. We don't judge. We listen. We met that guy, the Fire in the Sky guy. What was his name? Travis Walton. We met him, and he told us his story firsthand. 100% credible guy. Very believable.
Do you look for tells in people?
I think the way they tell it sometimes is a bit of a giveaway, because I think those who are just either making it up or completely nuts tend to slip up somewhere by adding way too much information, or it just doesn't ring true. But it's just like anything else, you sit and judge people, and Travis was extremely believable, and he didn't come from any kind of background that would have led to him coming up with such a story, and he was one. I've met other people who've had various different experiences and are only too pleased to have somebody to talk to who just won't laugh at them. And I think there's a lot more information out there if people didn't feel it was I don't know, the source of hilarity for others.
If you had the ability now to say to the aliens, to give them a message, if they were watching this, what would you want to say?
Save us. Save us all, because I think we're all in a lot of trouble.
Oh no, I don't know.
No, we are. I mean, the economic problems that are going on around the world, which, you know, Greece, Italy, and I was sitting waiting to get on the train, and it said this morning that Britain's going to borrow another 100 billion in the next, you know, 3 or 4 years. We're in trouble. The whole place is in trouble.
I think
help! Come get us!
Yeah, I mean, you know, there is a countdown to what I think is going to be a huge problem in terms of economics and commerce, and you know, the recession. I think what we're living through at the moment is just a fraction of what's going to happen in the next year or so. And you know, there probably will be wars out of it, and so forth. It is a pretty gloomy time out there.
And unfortunately, if the aliens have been observing us for thousands of years, they won't do squat because they haven't done.
They won't step in on that basis.
No, unfortunately, I think that's true. Unless it gets to the point where, because you know, if you look at economic pain in the past, has led directly to people coming to power. Obviously, Hitler took advantage of it, which led to a world war, which, you know, at the time we only just had developed the weapons that could have destroyed the planet, and the first use of those pretty much killed the war off, as we all know. So I don't think we were in any danger then of total annihilation. That is not true anymore. None of us knows where this is all going to lead, because, you know, we've seen small riots here and there, fairly meaningless in the greater scheme of things, but not meaningless on a domestic basis. And Ray's right, we have no idea where this is all going to lead and how bad things are going to get. And then there's talk of the Illuminati waiting in the background to take over and run the whole planet for us in an almost communist way, so that everyone gets looked after and blah blah blah, and who knows who they are and who knows who sits behind them, and whether that's got alien infiltrations, because I've heard it all. But we're headed to something, and I don't know what it is, but it's not good. And a lot of people have said now that, you know, recessions come and go. No one knows when this one's going anywhere, because the news just keeps getting worse and worse. And although I know you can print money all day long and have the machines going, I don't know, it's not good. But I don't think the aliens will step in until such time, and I don't care how crazy this makes me sound, as someone is about to put their finger on the button and do something really stupid.
You can look at humans as a sort of it's almost like a cancerous organ on the planet, because, you know, look at the way it's multiplying. It's using up all the resources. I mean, we are a danger to the planet. The planet has been around, as we said earlier, for billions of years, and, you know, and it could be that we'll be responsible for killing off the planet, but there may be other people out there, or aliens out there, that think the planet's more important than us for other reasons, and they might be, you know, they might like to see, you know, the human race, you know.
There was
So you don't think they're communicating with any other species?
Well, there was a very interesting comment made by the Colonel at the Rendlesham incident, where he said, and I heard this very recently, that's why I know it, that just before, I think it was, they saw the craft in the forest, all the animals went quiet. Everything, the birds, there was not a murmur. Before that, they could hear the birds in the trees, and now whether that was because the animals were frightened by either the vibration, the noise, or whatever, or whether they knew something, who the hell knows. So no, it's impossible for us to even think if they are able to make any kind of contact with any other living species. There's
no great alien in the sky called Noah going to come down and save the other species.
Well, I don't know that. I don't know. It's easier to say no, but, you know, one thing that we learned about through alien autopsy, and in some ways was our way of having a laugh back at everybody else, was when you sit and listen to all these people with an opinion of what. You know, you'd have a professor in America looking at the alien autopsy and, well, that doesn't look right. Well, how many aliens have you autopsied? I'm sorry, are we missing something?
But also, the other thing is, you can argue any side of the story you want. I mean, I could successfully argue that I'm wearing, you know, black trousers, and and you can argue almost any side of, you know, anything you want.
But it's very difficult when there's little to no frames of reference for anything. So until such time as somebody's able to, I mean, Ray and I looked at the paper yesterday. There was the picture of the alien in the fridge. Have you seen this?
In Russia.
Oh, this is fabulous. It's in the Metro, page 3, and a woman in Russia claims that she came across a crash site and she picked up this little dead alien and shoved it in her fridge.
It's been there for 2 years.
All right, and it's frozen and it's in cellophane and all the rest of it. Now, it could be a joke, it may not be a joke. It was certainly treated in the paper as something of a jovial manner, but what if it's not? Now go and explain that one away. Well, of course, as we know, for every one person who says that's a real alien, there'll be 10 who'll tell you it's not and why it's not. And it's, you know, it's probably, I guarantee this story will end up something to do with Chernobyl. It was actually a frog and it got blasted from Chernobyl and now it looks like an alien. So we're aware that there's an argument for everything because there are no frames of reference, and unless they cut that thing open and go, you know what, we don't know what the hell it is, but it certainly isn't from this
sent it
planet.
off to an institute.
They have, yeah, and it'll probably never be seen again, especially if it's for real. You'll never hear of it again.
Mind you, I have to say, when we visited the Natural History Museum, what they have in glass jars in back there, horrifying, absolutely amazing.
But that's more about mutations based on what you can recognise and what you know, just like when you get the picture of the, you know, the sheep with 3 eyes and the snake with 2 heads and that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, every opinion and everyone who's ever had anything to say about aliens, not one of them we are aware of has got first-hand, direct knowledge of diddly squat.
But the thing about the atoms in the glass jar really demonstrated that anything is possible when it comes to biology. And the creature that we had was not particularly unusual, you know, when you consider everything else that's out there at the moment.
That's true.
So, yeah.
Does it have any sexual?
Yes. I mean, from what we've seen, I mean, Fox had to pixelate them out, if I remember.
And the Japanese.
Because that's interesting, isn't it? A lot of the graves supposedly.
Well, the footage is not very clear. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it was female from what we could see.
But we're judging always by our standards.
Yeah.
So we have no way of knowing what it was or what its
I mean, the one
was,
interesting
because we're only basing it on our own knowledge.
I think the one interesting thing that we noticed is that the creature didn't have nipples, which I know sounds, you know, a mute point, but it was actually quite an interesting biological point.
Yeah.
You know, for you know the dignitaries that did look at it in the medical world.
Have you ever been tempted to really hoax something else again? Sorry, not again.
No, but we didn't hoax that.
Hoax something for the first time.
If we wanted
She did a good job.
But
restoration.
if we wanted, we could have had a lot of fun with the subject, and we could have rolled in, you know, maybe, you know, other campaigns. But the most important thing is that the first one wasn't a hoax; it was a restoration, and all we would have done is devalue, I think, the footage that we had by getting involved in something else.
Even to the point, actually, it's worth making a point that, I don't know about Ray, but I've advised people on various other documentaries and programs in this area, and I've actually told them not to put my name on it because I don't want to in any way affect people's view of their program because of my background. But I think it's a very, very important point to make is Ray and I never sat down in a room ever in our lives and thought, what can we come up with as a little stroke of genius to have a laugh with the rest of the planet? Had he not have been approached by the cameraman in Cleveland and gone off to see him, we would not be sitting here today. And there is nothing in the world that will ever get me to change that view, that position or anything, because it's the
But
truth.
as businessmen, have you never put the word out to try and find more?
We've been inundated with so much material, not just with aliens, but every conspiracy theory you could possibly imagine. And again, because of the alien autopsy, our involvement in those projects is slightly difficult because of the credibility issue.
And some we just wouldn't
I mean,
touch.
I can tell you, we're actually working on a project at the moment which is more remarkable than alien autopsy, and it's a really, really serious project. but how to get it to market without contamination, is an issue.
I see what you mean, yeah.
I've got footage at home from the girl who had the close encounter, who's no longer with us, that she gave me, that she shot herself from the window 2 weeks before she had the encounter, of an alien craft in the sky with something inside moving around that's definitely not human, which I've got and I haven't been unable to use because of various problems since she passed away. But I have the footage, I've seen it, 1 or 2 experts have seen it, they've seen the craft before but they've never seen the thing moving around inside, which is amazing. So things do come up, and also hoaxes, rumours. I've got this which turns out to be that, and various other things.
An interesting thing did happen in '95 when we went public with the footage. As I said earlier, just that everybody that had anything relating to a conspiracy or aliens would knock on our door and they'd say, "Would you help us market this?" But the most interesting were from former military and airline pilots, and we had police, and we had some very credible people come with photographs and statements and footage and so forth. A lot of it we haven't touched. And the reason, again, is because there's no point in us going down that route at the moment. Maybe at some stage later on in life we'll license it on to another company.
And it's, you can't really catch lightning in a bottle. We had our moment, we did what we did, and we're very proud that we were able to bring it to the world and for people to see. And they don't want to believe, that's entirely up to them. We've never forced anybody to believe anything, but it is something that we're proud of, certainly very proud of, and also, probably more than right, I believe in very strongly. I believe there is other things out there, and whether the public can handle it or not, that's another story in time. In my opinion, you do have governments, I believe, doing their utmost to keep information away from people. You have a lot of very clever people out there who can put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4, and they will never give in.
So here we have footage painstakingly recreated and mixed in with the original. It reveals a dead alien being. It looks precisely like millions of reported eyewitness accounts from across the world of extraterrestrials. It has changed the lives of 2 logical men with strong convictions of the validity of aliens visiting planet Earth. Military leaders, astronauts, doctors, lawyers, people from all walks of life are witnessing UFOs and encountering aliens on a daily basis on every continent of the planet. Yet this is nothing new. From biblical times, there are eyewitness accounts of strange objects in the skies. In Nuremberg, in the 16th century, masses of people witnessed an hour-long sky battle, resulting in a thunderous crash outside the city. Numerous sightings in the 19th century were reported worldwide, including one in Venezuela, which caused radiation contamination in both humans and the surrounding woodlands. In 1897, in Aurora, Texas, there were reports of a crashed spaceship with the later burial of the alien crew, remarkably like the New Mexico incident 50 years later. In 1917, in Portugal, thousands witnessed the sun gyrate and descend. In 1926, a group of travelers saw a hovering disk in the Himalayas. During the Second World War, countless military pilots on both sides of the conflict reported seeing balls of light and strange craft. In 1946, Swedish defense experts were so worried that they officially expressed their concern. And from that day forward, the sightings have been growing. Air Force pilots disappearing whilst chasing UFOs, people being abducted, homes and properties invaded, secrets hidden by the elusive government bodies. All of this and more helping to build an increasing case file of staggering proportions. And what conclusion can we draw? Are we being slowly invaded? How long have they been here? What do they want? Should we be concerned when we hear the thousands of reports of animal mutilation and human genetic and hybrid experimentation? Are we simply lab rats for the aliens? And if our governments do know and have been dealing with these beings from another planet, then why? There is a mass of evidence and more every day. Surely it's time the governments of the world disclose the truth. We have the right to know.